Welcome all of you to this second unveiling in a series of 8 sculptures that Basil Sellers, former South Australian and brother of SACA Vice President Rex Sellers, that Basil has so generously donated to the Adelaide Oval and, I have to say, to South Australia. This is just over 3 years or so since Basil asked whether the SACA would be interested in accepting 8 sculptures at a cost of $800,000, 4 cricketers and 4 footballers, and we couldn't get to agree fast enough, obviously. Those cricketers and footballers would not have previously been honoured on the ground, either in a gates or stand or even a bar, so they had to have nothing named after them up till now. And of course, as you know, in the next few months or years, that'll make the choice very interesting. Sadly, due to a serious family illness, Basil Sellers, who was down here till the day before yesterday, can't be here today. But it gives me the opportunity to say not only how marvellous it is that he should have been so generous to this ground, to this state, to sport, but to elaborate a little bit on Basil Sellers, because he is a benefactor of some 50 charities around the world, not all sport, but mostly to do with art and mostly to do with youth, but not all to do with youth. So he's been a wonderful benefactor to everybody. The rule is that, as I said, that they are South Australians who played at the highest level of the sport on this ground, state cricket and or above, and of course in the days when football was played here, football at the highest level as well. I have to confess that he and I are the decision makers, so if it's wrong, then I'm to blame. So I think now I should introduce you Jim Maxwell. Jim has very kindly agreed to unveil the statue, and he and the sculptor Ken Martin, will say a few words in a minute, who's done a wonderful job and did a marvellous job with Jason. That's why we chose him again. He will unveil the subject with Ken, and then Jim will just say a few words about the subject. You get used to calling this fellow the subject, because otherwise it'll escape.
He's going to be here, isn't he? Slog, dirty slog.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Jim.
It's wonderful to see Darren Lehmann in action again. And you'll note that the SACA have done this superbly, because Jason Gillespie over there is hurling a thunderbolt in his direction and Buff's just buffed it over the fence, hasn't he? Look at the shot he's just played there. So it's beautifully done, and it's a privilege for me to be standing here and talking about someone who's brought so much pleasure to all of you for many years. I mean, he is the archetypal old-fashioned Australian cricketer, a bit like another well-known character you've had in town in recent days, Dougie Walters, who between a beer and a smoke went out and made a few runs, and I think Darren was pretty much cut of the same block if you look at the way he played the game. He lived and died by the sword, and many of you will remember a lot of the almost 28,000 first-class runs that he scored, because a lot of them were scored on this famous ground. For me, there are a few images of Darren as a player that stand out, and probably the most poignant of all was in Sri Lanka in 2004 when he made 100, and he was very emotional about that 100 in Gaul, because it was only some months after he'd lost his great mate and one of your great mates here in South Australia, David Hooks. So I think he was inspired by the legend of Hooksy, and it drove him on to play some very special Test cricket in that series. He was a man who had some daring in his batting, some improvisation, some finesse, some wonderful power, and the sight of watching him bat against Utaya Muralitharan, who was a potential nemesis of the Australian batsman in this series, is something you can't forget, because he just took the game to him all the time. As soon as the ball went up a bit higher, Buff was down the pitch and smacking it for 4. And that's how he played a lot of his cricket in this sporadic international career. The vagaries of form, fitness, selection. He still played a lot of Test cricket. 27 Tests, 500s, some memorable play. And the other part of his game that people underestimated, a lot of batsmen did, that's for sure, was his bowling. Has there ever been a straighter slow bowler in the history of the game to get as many wickets as he did? If you add them all up, there's 380 of them in all matches. And the 6 wickets he took in Colombo in the 3rd Test of that extraordinary series in 2004 lingers for a long time. So it's great to be here, to be part of this ceremony. I think it's fantastic, as we've seen at the Sydney Cricket Ground, and now we're seeing here, that these famous players are honoured in such a delightful way. It really is superb. And just a final note before Darren comes up and has the right of reply, as it were, and admires his statue, his sculpture, which sits behind me. There are a lot of things that are iconic about this state. One of them is Darren Lehmann, and I think people will say in time that he's as iconic as a South Australian as the Holden motor car. Darren, hope you come.
Just before that happens, the silky voice of Jim Maxwell, thank you very much indeed for doing that. Just before Darren comes up, I'd just like to introduce you to the sculptor Ken Martin, who's going to say a few words. And he might just elaborate slightly on the difficulty, one difficulty, which we had with Darren's sculpture, which lasted, I think, 9 months. But perhaps you'd be gentle, more gentle than I would in telling us what that difficulty was.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for pointing out the difficulties. And I will elaborate on that in a sec. It's lovely to be here today, and to receive the news that I would be sculpting Darren Lehmann was an enormous thrill. The opportunity to capture in sculpture movement and technique of one of cricket's great batsmen was a tremendous thrill and a challenge. My sincere thanks go to Mr. Basil Sellers, the benefactor, for making this possible. His keen interest in and enthusiasm in this sculpture was, it just added to the creative pleasure that I took from the work. Thank you to Ian McLaughlin also for ensuring that my role ran smoothly. Actually, one thing that Ian said was too that what he specialised in was saying no. So when we were working through the sculpture, the process was to, I would, as I'm going along, I'd first create a steel armature and then apply the plasticine, and I'd send in progress reports, which is the same as I did with Jason. When it came to the issue that Ian refers to, I'd arrived at Darren was in taking full shape, and at this point wasn't wearing his baggy green, and it was Darren Lehmann through and through. But I have to say, Darren, once we placed that cap on you, there was an element that was causing a problem for Ian. So we had to work through the issues of your face. But we got there in the end. I think Rex was on my side. But it's been an enormous challenge. It's probably because of the technical issues of capturing the batting style and that powerful action of Darren's, the smooth, powerful action of Darren's without labouring, and the timing was one of the main points that I had to work through. And I'm very grateful for the help that Ian and Rex Sellers gave me in going through the techniques of batting. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the piece. And thanks very much, Darren. Thanks for your time in the early days. And good luck, and I hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for doing such a wonderful job. There were two issues now that I'm reminded. One was whether we were going to do him at 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, and the variations in the flesh on the face. And the second one you might notice is whether we had a slight tummy or whether we didn't have a slight tummy. And we came to a sort of 50-50 deal on that, and I can't remember who won on that. Look, just by introducing Darren, I just want to say that I've always thought that one of the great measures of a batsman is his all-time first-class average. And Darren's is over 50, nearly 58. When you look at that in world context, most other people would have been playing Test cricket all their lives. And Darren had a genius which almost nobody else that I can remember had, except perhaps for his old friend Hooksy. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a perfect delight for me to be able to introduce you to the subject, Darren Lehmann.
Well, I didn't think you'd have enough bronze for a start, Ken. The tummy probably could have been a little bit bigger, would have been the way to go, but look, it's a huge honour, a serious huge honour to have that bestowed. 22 yards from Jason, obviously, and to Ian and your board, thank you very much. It's an honour for my family. I get emotional all these sort of things, so I do apologise, but to the board, thank you. And to all the fans, especially the people who turned up today. It's a place that's dear to my heart, Adelaide Oval. Brought so many good memories to me as a player, but also as a fan coming to watch the likes of Ian Chappell and David Hooks when I was younger. Wayne Phillips, who's here today, he'd love me saying that anyway. But to all the people who've turned up to see this, it's a great job to Ken for all your hard work. Thank you very much. I think you've done a fantastic job. As I said to the board, thank you to Basil Sellers. Please pass on my best wishes, Pres, if you possibly can. To Jim Maxwell for the kind words at the start. And just a few more thank yous as I go. To my children, Amy and Ethan can't be here because they're at started school today in Brisbane. But to Jake and Tori, my other two children who live here, they're fantastic. Great to see them here. My grandma, who's made it, thank you very much, Grandma. Another person also who's not here is my mother, who I'd love her to be here, but she's not. Passed away 5-6 years ago, but I love her dearly. So thank you to Mum for everything you did for me. To my dad who's here, to all my other family and friends, it's a very, very important part of my life. You are my life. This Oval gave me an opportunity to represent my state, my club, but also Australia, and to have those, or this bestowed on me is just a huge, huge thrill for me personally and professionally as well. So thank you all for coming along. I'm sure I'll have a beer with a few of you throughout the day. To Barry Reese, again, thanks for making it here early, mate. You're more of a legend than I am, but thank you very much. To everyone else that's turned up today, enjoy the day's cricket. It's a great place to watch and play the game, and thank you very much.
Thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen. There's one little giveaway on this, that he wouldn't be watching the ball going over the fence if he's off stump and he's off bail had just come off. Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the Test match.